In a few moments, you will have an experience which will seem completely real. It will be the result of your subconscious fears transformed to your conscious awareness. You have 5 seconds to terminate this tape. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you again for joining me for another BG-Cast live podcast. Guys, this is the season 2 finale. Oh man, 2 seasons of BG-Cast, 2 years of doing this show now, and I have to say that I'm just forever grateful for this experience and this journey I've been on. I have met so many cool people, made a lot of cool friends along the way, and I have learned so much, not just about myself, but about everything that I talk about, everything that I believe. And I've learned a lot about all of you also. And I can't be happy enough to be ending off this season on a great note. I want to thank all of the guests who sat with me here this entire year, especially Sarah, the alchemist, for being on my show a whopping 3 times this year. I can't be grateful enough to Sarah, but nonetheless, guys, I'm really happy to end this off with this interview. So I have a friend of mine that's in the waiting room right now. We actually met, strangely enough, on Larkin Rose's Facebook page. We started chatting there, and it seems that we both kind of resonate with some of the issues going on, not just in the anarchist community, but the conscious collective at this time. So he shares my frustration and a little bit of what's going on, which is going to be interesting to talk about. And on top of that, too, he is on his own spiritual evolution, and he's been doing some work of his own, and he gets telepathic information, which, he's not the first person I've heard to be receiving this. So, guys, let's welcome Francis McDunn to the stage. What is up, man? How are you doing today?
Doing great. First time going to be on a YouTube interview in my life. So, yeah.
No, cool, man. Hey, dude, awesome. I'm glad to have you here. This will break you in. This will be your first time being on a podcast. So nonetheless, man, Let's kind of start off with you just for a little bit. Let's talk about your story. Let's talk about your awakening. It's something I ask a lot of my guests who are on the show for the first time, because I feel that, every awakening is precious. Doesn't matter how it happened. So I'm just curious for you, Francis, what was that burning bush moment or that event that you had in your life that kind of opened you up to seeing the world in a different light and through a fresh pair of eyes?
Okay. So first of all, I'm ex-Catholic. I was kind of a big believer in the Catholic faith when I was a youngster. And then after coming back from the States, because I'm born in Switzerland, half American, half Swiss. When I came back from the States after being 2.5 years over there, my parents put me into catechism class, like after school and all that. So I think it was every Wednesday afternoon, if I remember correctly. I started doing catechism because, I went to learn the mainstream stuff of the Catholic faith and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once after coming back home, I started looking at Illuminati videos from Christian truthers and all that. and they were talking about the satanic stuff behind Hollywood and all that. So I was like, that's weird.
Okay.
So if that happens over there, what happens behind religion? But I was still a statist at that time.
Okay.
My anarchism, my awakening to anarchism didn't start until like the end of 2015, in beginning of 2016.
Okay.
But before becoming an anarchist, I slowly but surely transitioned from Catholicism to New Age, and all that, believing in the Ashtar command. Personally, I do believe Ashtar exists, but that the New Age movement completely twisted his image. And then later on, as I research a little bit more on YouTube, Odyssey, and stuff like that, I started kind of getting a grip, like, okay, we're not supposed to be doing politics. And gradually I stopped voting and all that. Sometimes I would still vote for a little thing here or two, but then that's the thing I've really there's one thing who's concrete that I definitely stopped doing is voting. I know it's just a little tiny speck of the solution, but it's already that. And then when I started becoming an anarchist, I also started delving into I had a period of 2-3 years where I went a little bit into the dark arts.
Okay.
I considered myself a white Luciferian. I kind of did a deal with Azazel. I know it's a little bit stupid of me, but I felt like I was too much on a pink cloud of New Ageism. So I was like, I need to be a little bit more balanced.
Understood.
And after a while, I kind of got tired of being a Luciferian. So I started seeking more to be more in tune with the character of Shiva and Kal Bhairav.
Okay.
And kind of noticing also that there's a lot of fluff in the Black Lodge and the White Lodge.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's a lot of theater.
I would agree with you on that. I would, man. You know, one of the things I want to say is, you know, I resonate with your story, you know, with the Catholicism and going to catechism class because, you know, I grew up in the middle of the schism. My mom's side of the family was Roman Catholic. My dad's side of the family was Greek Orthodox. So, you know, similar story there, except I was yanked between two worlds as opposed to getting heavily thrown into one side of it. And congrats on getting out of the new cage movement, man. To me, that's why I joke people like you and I are, you know, I call it old age. And, you know, the reason why I call it old age is because, you know, we believe a lot of, our path is through these esoteric concepts without all of the fluff. You know what I mean? Like that's exactly what it is. And that's what I would kind of call old age. And I feel like the new age, and I'll get your opinion on this too. I feel like the new age has taken the esoteric concepts and they've put this very fluffy spin on them.
Oh yeah.
And they're using it almost in like a cult-like mentality. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, especially the new age from like the 80s. because I still find a little bit of truth in theosophy, like Rudolf
Theosophy?
Steiner.
Yeah,
Theosophy, yeah.
Steiner, yeah, the fourth way and all that. Okay.
Yeah, I've every now and then I look up stuff like that. It still kind of resonates, even though a lot of anarchists, big name anarchists, are like, "Ooh, Lucis Trust, how dare you?" But I mean, even Michael Tsarion, for example, he still looks up stuff from from Rudolf Steiner too. So I'm like, okay, we're supposed to be peeling what's the chaff and keeping the grain, the seeds, and all that. So
I'm with you,
yeah,
man. And that's one thing I think, that's let's move right into this now because you just brought it up. Our gripes with the, anarchist community when it comes down to a lot of reasons at this point, and you just brought up a very big point. I feel a lot of the anarchist community is still very much severed with spirit and a spiritual way of life. I feel personally that at minimum, if you're going to be adopting the personal philosophy of anarchism, the path of the good person
yeah,
should be at the front of your norms when you're doing this. And I feel like this is still a huge disconnect in the anarchist community. I get, no masters, no gods, no slaves, things like that. I totally get it. But I think really what they're missing out on is a huge empowering piece of the puzzle, that we're a
yeah,
focal point of God, that we have that power within us, and we can take that to actually manifest and create a really awesome anarchist existence. But I feel like this is something that a lot of them are missing. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah. Well, I'll explain what the bits and pieces that I have, or what I'm seeing. I have an impression or a feeling that even though there's a few big names out there who are like, really trying to force natural law into people's conscious minds and hearts and all that, which is good. I personally think we're barely even there yet, to be honest. Not trying to demonize the big names, even though I had a period this year where I was like, are you really sure you're doing anything? Larkin Rose, Mark Passio, Sethi Boza, and so on. But now I'm like, no, I am a part of the problem, because I'm trying to say, I'm always trying to point out when it's when I'm also have my part of responsibility too. But yeah, at the end of the day, I personally believe that we're barely even there yet. All the knowledge that certain people have, I personally think it's barely just 1% of what we can obtain from prime creation and all that.
I got you,
Yeah.
man. So I guess one thing I'm going to ask you, because this is something I've theorized myself based on what I've seen. Like I've said, I've been in this community for a long time, and I've never seen it as dysfunctional as it is today. And I honestly I want to ask you this question: do you feel a lot of this dysfunction that's taking place is purposefully done? Because we look at some of these big names, like the big names that you mentioned, and they have this, I'd say, pretty big platform, right? They have this wide reach to a wide audience, and and at least in my opinion, I foresee them not doing the right thing with this wide reach and this this large audience that they have. So I guess, I'll digress and get back to the question with you. Do you feel that some of this dysfunction is purposeful to keep us in this state of spinning our wheels? Because I feel if somebody with a
Yeah.
big name, were to come up and start talking what we're talking about right now, I think we would kind of see a shift in the community. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. And those big names like Mark Passio, Michael Tsarion, and so on, and all that. I mean, they're not part of mainstream media, but I've been looking at them since at least 2016. And I mean, even them, they admit that they've been doing this for quite a while, and nothing seems to be, especially Mark Passio, he's admitted that he's been doing that for 17 years and with very few results. I mean, I'm not claiming to be a mega expert on anything here.
I gotcha.
Because I'm not. But I have some understandings, some basic understandings, like, yeah, we're kind of stuck in molasses here, if you get a
I've
grip.
heard you use that before. Yeah.
Yeah, I am of the belief that the powers that should not be are like already ahead of us, and they're looking back like, oh, you're still stuck over there in those on those subjects. We're over here, but good luck.
I would agree with you
That's
on
the
that.
impression I have, and we're just like, just a sec. Come on, okay, I'm gonna get you.
That's a good way. That's a good way to put it, man. No, I think you summed it up figuratively in a great way. And no, I'm with you, man. I'm in agreement. I think, there's a few. The one thing I will say is there's a few people I'd like to think, like people like you and I included, are can see that these parasite class are taking advantage of the certain predicament that the conscious collective is in at this period in time. I do think in ways that they fuel it too. That's why in my show I was talking about with Chris Matthew yesterday. I do think, we look at a lot of the psyops and the events that have happened over the course of the last decade, and how a lot of it kind of filtered down into, the spiritual community, the anarchist community, all of these kind of things, it kind of really hit us first. So, and I'm with you, man. And I, speaking on to Mark Passio, who has been doing this for like 17 years to no avail, that brings up an even bigger question. I think our movement has been kind of infiltrated for a little bit, man. I actually had confirmation from somebody on the show. He was on the show a little bit ago. He actually was born. I'm not going to name names, but I'll send you the link if you want to know about him. But he was born into one of these bloodline families, and he is thoroughly. He got out though. And he's kind of confirmed a lot of that they are ahead.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Oh, Francis just, I guess we lost signal. Oh, here he is. He is back in. Let's give him 1 sec. Thanks, everybody, for being patient. Guess we are having some technical difficulties. Hold on one moment here. Francis is all the way in Switzerland. So let me just reach out to him real quick. But nonetheless, what we're getting at here, guys, is I do think there we go. Francis, can you hear me? Man, what a time for the conversation to cut out. For some reason, okay, so I'm talking with Francis right now. For some reason, he can see me and hear me, and I can't see him. This is really strange. All right, Francis, I'm gonna since you can hear me real quick, try signing out of the studio and signing back in. So just go down to leave studio and then just sign back in. He can hear me. Okay, cool, sweet. All right, so let's give it a whirl here. But yeah, guys, what I'm getting at here is, and you all have heard me talk about this, time and time again. I feel that our community, our conscious collective, has been infiltrated for quite some time. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with Francis here. Let's go ahead and wait for him real quick to hop back in. But in the meantime, guys, while we wait for Francis to hop back in, I wanted to say this. I hope you guys are enjoying your holidays. And, the holidays for me are more about family time. But all right, here's Francis. Let's get back to it.
Okay.
All right,
Sorry
man.
for
All
that.
right, man. No, all good, man. All good. No sweat. No sweat. I understand you're all the way in Switzerland, so we're doing this.
And I'm doing this on my phone.
and he's doing it on his phone. So nonetheless, as I was getting at with you, man. So what we were talking about, was the anarchist community has I feel like we've been infiltrated for a long time, just based on what you were saying. Mark Passio has been doing this for 17 years to no avail. I know Larkin Rose has been doing it since the late 2000s as well. I know a lot of these guys have had skin in the game for a while, and they feel like nothing is coming of that. So I want to ask you, why do you think that is? I guess we have a couple of things we can draw from here. Do you feel that the human condition and the human nature kind of bars us from potentially, at this moment in time, experiencing and completely kind of understanding and enveloping ourselves in this new way of being? Or do you feel that potentially there is some kind of force out there that's trying to stop this from happening? I feel it's a combination of both, but I definitely want to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I definitely suspect that there's a force, or like a certain type of legion or something like that. I personally think that how I see it is like, what we're dealing with is, depending on the different parts of the world, the different continents, how I see it is American hegemony is Satan, European hegemony is Lucifer, the dark Lucifer. The Middle East and Israel is Ahriman. China and Russia is Saturn, the tyrant, not the god or the planet. And that's what we're up against. Okay. That's how I see it.
So one thing I want to ask you too, this is something that's been coming up a little bit more lately, and I'm actually kind of starting to entertain it a little bit more as of now, since the Trump Elon Musk machine is now kind of starting to grow and cultivate itself here.
Yeah, so and a few anarchists too still believe that bullshit.
I know, right? So like, my thing is this: do you feel like there is some kind of like these factions that are potentially warring right now for the control over us? Because this is something that's kind of come up a little bit. They talk about the Malachians or the Malokians, who are like what we would potentially call the old world order, some of the older people that have been involved in the parasite class and in the elite families for a while. And then we have the Luciferians, which are supposed to kind of bring in this new world order. And a lot of these Luciferians are potentially people like, Musk, like Trump, and it is says
Yeah,
that
or
did
even
say that,
higher.
or even higher. Yes, exactly. I mean, we're just talking bottom of the barrel, and that's one thing. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
but I also, it's told that, Trump's a practicing Kabbalist also too, which has kind of been starting to come to light, which I think is very interesting. So, I mean, do you think that there's potentially these warring factions for this control over us, or a control over this narrative or this, what we'll say, this matrix reality that we're
Yeah.
experiencing? Because we know that the only thing that keeps this system running is our focus and our focus on it. So I want to hear your opinion on that. Because you brought up, the hegemony of, the Satan and the dark Lucifer and all that. Do you think that it's possible there could be these warring factions at this point in time? Because it's starting to kind of seem that way.
I'm going to answer this question by saying that when I was 3 years old, I saw the Russian military. I saw an army taking over a town called Neon, which is about 40 or 30 kilometers. I know it's miles where you're at. Yeah, maybe like 20 miles or so from Geneva, Switzerland. It's a small town. It's a town where I used to live years ago. But when I was 3 years old, I had a dream where I saw an army or a few generals and all that. I was in a train. I was in the dream. I was 10 years old. We were coming into this town. The train stopped, and we were a bit like, me and all the other people in the dream, we were like, this is weird. Why are we stopping like 2 minutes away from the train station? Then we got out. Then there was a few generals coming, running towards us. At that time, I didn't know who it was. But looking in retrospective, I understand now that it's possibly the Russians. I don't know exactly what they said, but it was kind of in the way like, we're taking over now. And one other element of that dream, which was weird, is that there was a giant human hand, but who was the size of like a small table, who was cut and laying on the train tracks.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Potentially giants?
I don't know. There was just like a giant cut hand on the tracks.
That's very interesting, man.
And I'm going to continue by saying what I have my own personal prophecy. I think the Western faction of the deep state is being drained by the Eastern faction of the deep state. And
I can get down on that.
Yeah, that's why we're seeing so much enthusiasm in the BRICS alliance and all that. I know this is probably going to hurt some feelings in the anarchist community in the States, but I'm kind of a apolitical pro-Russian. I'm against the demonization of the Russian people. Just to put a little quote in there. Because I know that in the States we're like, oh, those Soviets, they're always fucking things up, you know. every now and then if you listen to veterans, they're like, oh, the Soviets and all that. Basically, I'm for like a union, not union in political terms. I'm seeing like a unification of Americans and Russians, you know, but the people, politicians, obviously, and all that.
No, I'm with you, man. I agree with you, man. And you know, one thing I'm kind of looking up for, I'm looking up right now. I'm gonna see if I can find it, but I know they've scrubbed it off the web, and so I can. One thing I could say is that I empathize with you on what you're talking about being apolitical pro-Russian. You don't want to see the Russian people demonized. I mean, I come from the train of thought that essentially all of these world leaders and everything they're already all in cahoots, and the beef,
that's for sure,
or the conflicts that we see are all part of this staged narrative to keep us roped in the Hegelian dialectic, and to keep us focused on this system, to keep it running. And so the one photo I was looking for, and I can't seem to find it anymore at all. I think I definitely feel it's been scrubbed from the internet, but one thing I'll try to do is I'll try to go to the archive website and see if I can pull it up. But it's a photo of George W. Bush, Putin, and the current Chinese prime minister. They're all in their skull and bones uniforms, or they're all
I've seen it.
Their secret society uniforms, and they're all hanging out together, laughing and having a good time.
Yeah, I've seen it.
But that's where I'm coming from with it when you know we're talking about you being, you know, an apolitical pro-Russia person, is, you know, you kind of see that for what it is. You don't think the Russian people should be demonized. I don't think any people should be demonized, honestly, personally, myself too.
Yeah.
So I know there's a huge, you know, and a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this. They're going to get pissed off on my end for when I say this. You know, there's you know, a whole thing with the Jewish community at this point in time as well. You know,
I'm definitely for Palestine. That's for sure.
Okay.
Obviously.
I understand where you're coming from on that for sure, man. And I don't, you know, for me, I'm just going to lay it out like this. I'm not a fan of any nationalist movement, regardless if it has to do with a specific country or not. So like, that's just how I roll too. But, you know, at the same time, man, I understand that, but that's a very, back to your dream. That's a very interesting dream. I do think there is some kind of symbolism in it for what could potentially come. The thing that has me is the giant hand on the track.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, go right ahead. Yeah.
I did have another dream, like I think it was like 3 years ago, well, at least 2 years ago, I think, if I remember well, that I was in the astral version of this city in Russia called Ryazan. Okay. And all the people that I was seeing in that city were Pleiadians. You know, the Nordics.
Okay, very interesting.
So I think they possibly have a base in that city, which is why Russia is so strong right now.
It could very well be, man. And you know, one of the things I've at least,
or how about let's say it this way. I personally think the Russian people are being protected by what we know to be the Pleiadians or Ashtar Sharan. I know a lot of people are going to be like, that's a demon. That's Ashtaroth. No, it's not. I assure you it's not.
Well, I get what you're saying on that for sure.
Yeah. For me, Ashtar Sharan is a modern version of Thor, if that makes sense.
Understood. Well, that's the other thing too, man, that a lot of, and that's where we start to gravitate. I don't want to sound like, you know, I'm going to say it in a better way, not the way I was going to say it. That's when we start gravitating into really deep esoteric and spiritual concepts of, you know, understanding non-dualism. So, I mean, if one of the biggest things I think, you know, and this is going to be a hard pill for a lot of the religious minded to swallow, is, you know, we have instances of angels and demons being one and the same. Like, it's the different roles that they play in the certain frequency or perspective of what's going on at the time. So that's why when you bring up, Astaroth not being a demon per se, but almost like Thor in a lot
No,
of ways.
Ashtaroth is the demon, but Ashtar Sharan is not Ashtaroth.
Astar Sharon. Okay, so there's the difference there. Okay, but yeah, no, I'm with you, man. And but no, that's very interesting that you're saying that that the Pleiadians potentially have a base there in
Because
Russia.
the governments of China and Russia, they're under influence of Saturn the Tyrant. And I've actually had physical confirmation, because I've asked once while staring at my window, who is behind China? And then I was looking at the trees outside my window, and then suddenly I seen, like, in my third eye, a pair of black eyes, like, looking very fiercely at me. And then in the background, I could see a skull forming in the leaves of the trees, and that was Azazel.
It's very interesting, man. So like the one thing I would say about this is, are we talking about, so when we say Saturn the Tyrant, are we talking about like
Kronos.
Saturn Kronos? Exactly. That's
Something like
exactly
that,
where
yeah.
I was getting at. Yeah. And I'm wondering potentially too, have you heard of the Saturn death cult? Have you ever heard?
The
Yeah.
Brotherhood?
The Saturnian Brotherhood. I guess they think that originally Earth used to orbit Saturn, based
Eventually.
on, or I guess it was based on a lot of the ancient human history. They were talking about how there was this constant twilight. There wasn't really a night or a day or anything like that. But if Earth were to be supposedly orbiting around Saturn, that's what would be the case. But the really strange thing about that theory is there's always that one strange thing about it is plants only react to red and blue wavelengths of light when it comes to UV, and that's what Saturn only produces, is the red and the blue wavelengths of that light. So like, I mean, yes, it's interesting.
Okay, that's something I did not know.
Yeah, so
you're giving me some information.
There you go. It's interesting. I mean, do I buy it? No. I think something else is completely going on, but I know one of the premises of the Saturnian Brotherhood or the Saturn Death Cult is this, that they do want to, and we've seen this similarity on the Georgia Guidestones. The Earth needs to be under 500 million people in total for Saturn to come back and rule again. So that's interesting. We see that correlation with that 500 million number, not just on the Guidestones, but also in the lore of this cult.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
No, so that's interesting, man. No, that's really cool. So like, let's kind of dive into a little bit of your experiences like this. So I mean, what you had is something I would call a very sober spiritual experience, and that's an awesome thing to have there, man. That's cool because
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go right ahead. What were you gonna say? Yeah.
The first spiritual being, or I would say paranormal or spiritual experience I've had in this lifetime was also at 3 years old.
Okay.
Where I used to live back in the day. It was in the middle of the night. I heard like a thud. I got out of my room. There was this hallway. Looked both sides, and then the last time I look on my left, I see like a shadow of a head with horns. Just of a head, a shadow of a head, and I could hear like sighing. And then back like in 2021-ish, I've had telepathic confirmation that was Azazel.
Very interesting. Very interesting, man. So like one of the things I want to ask you, because you're one of the people who, actually the very first person on this show that has come out and admit he's made a pact with an entity like that. So what were kind of some of the effects that you experienced from that in your life? That's something I want to bring up. I mean, was it, I guess what I'm getting at here is, was it profoundly negative, or was there some kind of learning experience that
I would say it was kind of a learning experience?
Yeah, let's hear about it. Like how did that all kind of begin to go down, and then what was the overall experience of, you know, making this pact?
Well, first I wanted to, it was to have more connection and more balance in a way, because I felt like I was too new agey and too focused on just the light. And when I first did the pact, it was in the astral, in a dream, in a lucid dream, where I was in a parking lot somewhere in the States, because I could see it was American style parking lot. And I was looking around, and suddenly there was a piece of glass that that came onto my thumb, my right thumb, and blood spilled on some rocks. And then I turn, and then I see a huge black mass with what looked like a black asphalt black ripped up robe with black flames coming out of it. And it wasn't cartoonish it was like really like, I'm looking at you, you know, like we're looking at both of us, and I could just see the bottom of the robe. There was no feet, there was just black flames coming out of the robe, and it was all ripped up and all that. And then I knew that was Azazel as well. And then later on, I asked for a black magician to do a pact for me. And then I started having things happen where everywhere where I would go in the town I live in, when I would cross the street, I would have cars stall when I would go like that.
Very strange.
Yeah. And once I was taking a bus to go back home, and the driver of the bus had to start his bus 2 times. And I was like, oh, great. Now it's going to start in the bus too. But yeah, there was times where it was also like testing, because I could feel his presence. When I would suddenly get intrusive suicidal thoughts, and I'm like, no, I can't be doing this. Why am I thinking this? And then I was like, I know it's not my thoughts. Or sometimes, or once actually, I was feeling like angry and just like having enough with the human stupidity. And I was going back home also, and I had a telepathic message of Azazel saying, good, I like it when you're angry. Continue.
What? That is so weird, man. Yeah. That's strange to experience. And I mean, so ultimately, I guess the next thing I'm going to ask is, did you kill the pact off? Because it seemed
when I started, let's say, flaking off out of the Luciferianism and all that, I started having this devotion of Shiva and Kal Bhairav coming up, and I also was like, I need to get back to Sanat Kumara as well, and all that. But it was especially Shiva and his counterpart Kal Bhairav where I was getting more closer to.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's when I really started getting even more telepathic messages and all that with the years and all that.
That's very interesting, man. So like that's good. It seems like that different energies almost kind of came into play into your life. That energy no longer serviced you. So that's one thing I wanna throw out there for any of the viewers or the listeners who might potentially feel there's a dark cloud hanging over them. You know, have discernment with your thoughts. You know, understand that you are not what you think, and it is potential that it's a potential that there could be exterior influences trying to influence your thoughts as well. You know, we live in a very strange time where spiritual activity is at an all-time high. So, you know, definitely, man, that's good. That's good that you got out of that, though. I'm happy that you broke away from that pact.
Do you see the drawing of the Trishul of Shiva?
Yes, I do.
Well, that was a telepathic drawing. I was like, it's like I was told to. I kept having these intrusive thoughts from like the Shiva energy and Kal Bhairav energy, like draw this, you know, and then suddenly it came out like that.
That's very interesting, man. So one thing I want to ask you, you know, because I think there's a lot of people in our community who have, you know, very what I would call high strangeness or highly strange experiences. What's an indicator for these messages that are coming through to you? Like, do you potentially in some ways get like a frequency or a pitch ringing in your ear? Do you feel something from within that is almost like I would say an emotional telepathy, something you feel from within you? I mean, what's a key indicator for you that you're about to undergo one of these experiences?
I feel like a fodder energy behind me sometimes.
Okay.
And when I say something right or potentially correct, I feel a ringing in my right ear.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm picking your brain about it, because I also too, you know, I get this, and it's gotten exponentially more intense as the years have gone on, but I get this ringing in my ear too. I get it in both ears. I get it in my right and my left. And I've kind of, in the beginning, I went off the old wives' tale that if you hear it in your right ear, someone's saying something bad about you, but if you hear it in your left ear, someone's saying something good about you. But
I've heard vice versa.
You've heard vice versa. Okay, left ear something bad, right ear something good. Okay. So like I've heard that, but I've also, there's been really intense ones that I to myself in a lot of ways felt like were potentially some kind of message that was coming through. And what I've done also myself is I've kind of looked over, like I've experimented. I experiment on myself a lot, you know, that's why the whole Kriya yoga thing came into play and all that. But I'll start to look at like the information that comes to mind, or like the messages that come to mind after I have these experiences. And usually that's been a telltale sign there is some kind of communication happening. So that's why I wanted to pick your brain. So what do you mean by a fodder energy, if you don't mind me having you emphasize on that a little bit?
It's literally like sometimes it's like, if it's like from the inside of my head, suddenly it comes up like out of the blue. Sometimes it feels like there's literally someone behind me, but it's like it feels like it's a fine veil of someone behind me.
Okay.
You know when like when it's like the feeling like you have a spotlight shining on you, but from behind.
I know what you mean. Almost like that presence, like that aura that's
Yes.
behind you of some kind of energy or something that's out, some an energy aside from yours. I get what you're saying.
Hmm. And the thing with Shiva and Kalbhairav is that those are energies who are, let's say, those are beings that are only, that normally who should only be called up for a specific reason, or like if you have a reason to call up on them and all that.
I understand what
And
you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. And recently this year, or like a few weeks ago, I felt once Kalbhairav, I had this rush of anger, and I suddenly had to write down something, and I think, I'm not sure if you probably saw that. Probably you did. It was that one message where I wrote down, hold on, how did it go already? Yeah, I think I wrote down, he was saying the most foolish thing you can do in you people in the anarchist community is to think that my wrath will not touch you. Something like that.
That's very interesting, man, because like I feel, kind of going back to the anarchist community a little bit, I feel like there has been some degeneracy that has manifested itself in the anarchist community. And I think that's one thing you've heard me rip on a couple of times, man, because it's like, well, this is the thing. My thing is this is, we're ultimately trying to get people on board with our ideology, right? Like, we want more and more people to understand that they have this sovereign power and they have this ability to step into this new way of being and this new way of life. But a lot of people, especially a lot of public figures in the anarchist community, in the way that they present themselves, I feel that there is that degeneracy almost that's manifested itself. And like, there's this one person on X, I'm not going to name names, but like, they're an anarchist and they're trying to get people, but then they take like these wet t-shirt photos and things like that of themselves. And it's like, like what kind of, or,
I don't know who that one is.
No, that's on X. That's not on Facebook. So yeah, I'm not going to name names on that, but
you'll tell me
think
later on.
I will. I think they're a cool person. Don't get me wrong. Like I do. I think they're a cool person. And but at the same time, like, if you're trying to get what I'm getting at here is the general collective doesn't take people like you and I seriously. And if we're trying to get people to be on board with our ideology or be on board with our train of thought, I feel presentation matters. Like, we have to present ourselves as educated, quality human beings. And I'm like, I'm not saying we can't be human. Like, yes, in our personal lives, when we're with friends at gatherings, things like that, let it roll, dude. But like, if you're getting up there as a figurehead of any kind for any kind of community, and you're preaching a message, I think you've got to have a good presentation, especially
that's
talking
why I
about
don't
what
have
we
a
talk
podcast.
about. No, I got you, man. And dude, trust me, man, you want to know how long it was before I did this, man? It was 15 years I had been in the community, dude. 15 years before I even thought it was okay and I was ready enough to pull the trigger on something like this, because I knew, and this was my mentality behind it, I wanted to wait till I was healed enough.
That's basically the stage I'm in. Yeah.
I wanted to wait till I was healed enough to portray the message in a way that I see fit. And that is going to be productive, and that's going to help us, So that's why, I mean, dude, if I had started doing this, I mean, it originally started in 2020. But, I had to put it down. But I even look back and I'm thankful I put it down back then, because I look at myself in 2020 and I saw that I had a lot of growing to do. Oh, I was in the midst of watching everything I talked about for the past 12 years start to come to fruition and come to real life. And
Oh yeah,
that
me
was
too.
there was a spur of fire. Yeah, no, of course you get it. There was some anger and some fire there. Like I told you guys, I fucking told you for 12 years this shit was gonna happen. And now look. And but then again, too, like when it comes to relaying the message, one of the biggest things that I realized is you get more in life with honey than you do vinegar. That doesn't mean you have to sugarcoat it, but
For sure.
it means you phrase it in a way that people are going to pick up on a little bit more than just yelling in their faces.
Yeah.
So you know how that is. But no, man, nonetheless, what I was going to ask you next, the last thing is solutions, man. So like I wanted to talk with you about some solutions. I'm going to throw one at you right now. I think really what we need to be primarily focusing on first is subjective healing and working through our subjective issues. What do you think about that? Because I think that's where it begins. I know it sounds kind of cliche to a lot of people, where it's, you have to heal yourself before we can start healing others, but it's the truth in my eyes. So I want to pick your brain on what are some possible solutions, Francis, we could be doing to be moving ourselves forward instead of being stuck in this molasses.
Now, even though I'm not one of the best experts in solutions, but I'll give you this. Convincing people already to stop voting, I think, would be already a baby step forward, at least.
That's a big one. And that one's going to be the
Especially
reason why
on my side.
I'm with you, man. The reason, but dude, like with the election here that just happened in the States, man, they propped up the illusion that our vote matters. They just propped it up, dude. So that's going to be a real fun. I'm with you. I 100% agree with
I don't
what you're
know
saying.
all the other stuff per se. I've heard other people talk about solutions, but before we continue saying, oh, we need crypto or we need to buy gold and so on. Yeah, definitely need to do shadow work or more forest contemplation, Shinrin Yoku, and all that.
Okay. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, or Japanese forest bathing. That's basically what's called here in the West.
Well, it's interesting because one thing, when we talk about the two types of Maya, we have the Maya of nature and the societal Maya, or AKA the Matrix, as everybody likes to call it. But the Maya of nature is very beneficial to us. It's even stated in a lot of the Vedic texts that the Maya of nature will teach us spiritual lessons. And there's a lot of symbolism that exists there in the Maya of nature that we can apply to our real life. So I agree with you on that. I think it is good to go out to the forest and go out to the nature and to do contemplation and things. Yes.
That's for sure. Yeah, I would say those two things. What could I say? What else could I say? Definitely, I would say to people, definitely start learning symbolism. Maybe not on the level of a super professional, but like a student level,
Start understanding the basics. Totally.
Yeah. Like, why is there orange and purple on this or that corporation? Or why is there a lot of red and blue and green and yellow and all that everywhere? Mental mockery and mind control, with the colors and all that.
Totally,
like even here in Switzerland, I see some I can see it everywhere now. The supermarkets, the banks, mid-sized stores, mid-sized chain stores, and all that. That there's an organic fast food chain that I go sometimes, who only exists in Switzerland. It's called Holy Cow, and
That's really cool though. Like
their branding is black.
interesting.
And you have they have a sigil where you literally have the head of a cow with the horns in a circle, and then underneath it says "Holy Cow."
Well, that's good you pointed that out, man. And by the way, so we have something like that here in Colorado in the States. I don't know. So we have this fast food chain. It's called Good Times, and actually in their logo, there's no really intense symbolism, but they use like grass-fed beef in their burgers. They cook their like fries in tallow.
Yeah, same.
Like yeah. No, I'll eat there from time to time. Hell yeah, dude. Like I mean that if you're as long as if I'm getting good quality food and it's cooked in tallow and not seed oils, I will definitely have a burger from time to time. 100%, man. And but no, I'm with you, dude. You learning the symbolism. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, even the food in supermarkets here in Switzerland is way better than what's in the States or even Canada.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, being a Swiss and American, I can tell you that here in Switzerland and other parts of Western Europe, it's like 20 times better. It's not perfect, but it's like 20 times better.
Dude, I'm with you, man, and that's one of my biggest things.
You want to know why it's better? It's because when you go into for example, here in Switzerland, into a supermarket, you can actually smell the food, the fresh produce, the fruits and the veggies, compared to Walmart or Target, where you only smell popcorn and plastic.
Yeah, you only smell exactly, man.
Talking about experience.
No, that's cool that you have that perspective. No, it's awesome to hear that too, because like I think a lot of people, and I even have a lot of the elder generation out here in the States. They say how the food is different now. It's not the same way it used to be. It used to be way more tasty, way tastier, way more filling.
Oh, yeah.
But let's talk about what you were saying with the symbolism real quick. I'm in agreement with you, man. I think another thing too that a lot of the collective has become disconnected with is basic human psychology and nature. I think that would be a beneficial thing to learn, because if you understand basic human psychology and basic human nature, you can see that already puts about 65 to 70% of the conspiracies that we talk about when it comes to large sums of money, lobbying large sums of money, government misinformation, or government cover up as being potentially true. So like I think that is along with the symbolism, also understanding a basis of human nature, human psychology, and the psychology of governments.
Yeah. And I would definitely say to people, beware of the alcohol you drink. Look at the symbolism on your wine bottles, your gin bottles. Already the name gin, that has to ring a bell.
The gin, yes.
Look at the symbolism on the wine bottles or any type of alcohol or spirits. Already that.
That's a good one too, man. And that's the thing and that's one thing that I kind of, I don't know. I think I have a really different opinion about alcohol than a lot of people in the spiritual community. I don't think in moderation it's bad.
It's not all the alcohols, I think.
It's not exactly
the alcohol sections in supermarkets here in Switzerland and in my area. It depends what's marked on it.
Okay.
Suddenly, for example, there's an Italian gin who's called Malfi, and I was like, that's weird, because I know that there's a goetic spirit that's called President Malfas,
Very interesting. Okay.
And each time I would get closer to those bottles of that name, I would get like tingling in my head, on my head.
Very interesting, man. Yeah, no, I like I said, I think that's the case too, because we look at one of the biggest things that we look at ancient Christianity, and ancient Christians used to do wine rituals to help walk the
Or
dead
beer.
into the afterlife. Yeah, or beer rich. Yes, exactly. So
I've
I'm
been
in
to
agreement.
Belgium too.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you. So I think you brought up a very good point. It's not the alcohol itself, it's what the alcohol is marked with. I think personally too, it's the form of alcohol. I think if you're drinking, and this is in moderation, folks, I do think that anything in excess, of course, is going to drain you spiritually. We do, if we eat in excess, we watch too much TV in excess. I mean, anything in excess is going to drain you spiritually. But I think one, we should, exactly, that's a really cool thing. We should be looking at the symbolism on the alcohol bottles. And I think if you drink the natural alcohols like beer, wine, and mead in moderation, you're going to be less susceptible to any of those potentially negative energies that you could experience, because you have to think fermentation is a natural process. So I mean, it's, wine is as close to nature as you can get. I mean, it was said that wine was found out because somebody was walking by a fermented pile of grapes that were leaking this juice.
I think I've heard of that.
And they took a sip of it and they were like, holy crap, this stuff is magical, I guess. And they ended up, I mean, I'm not a huge drinker anymore. I will have a drink on occasion. Yeah, on occasions I will, like over the holidays and things. But yeah, no, what were you pointing at?
Oh, the drawing, that's why.
Yeah, no, of course, man. Well, Francis, I'm gonna say we're gonna wrap it up. But the number one thing, man, you did great on your first show. Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
Like freaking.
I'll have to tell you something important about Shiva in private after.
Yeah. If you want to hang out for a sec. Yeah. If you want to hang out a sec as soon as we get off here. But guys, I want to thank Francis for sitting here with me for the last episode of season 2, guys. So we will be back on January 8th with Corey Hughes from the podcast Understanding Propaganda. He's also producer over here at Forbidden Knowledge Network. And he's also, I believe, Understanding History is his newest podcast that he's come out with. So he's going to be sitting down with me again. It'll be his second time on the show. And we're going to be talking about a lot of the weird things that are going on right now and how we are potentially in some kind of mirage. I don't think the mirage is taken full effect.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I know, right? But that's just what we have in store for the beginning of season 3. But nonetheless, Francis, I have your Facebook page posted at the bottom of the description to both the Rumble.
I'm also on Instagram.
You're also on Instagram?
Yeah.
So why don't you shoot me out your Instagram handle real quick, and I'll also add that to the description as well.
It's literally Francis McDunn. My profile picture is a picture of Sanat Kumara.
Okay. All right. Hell yeah, man. So we got Francis McDunn on Instagram.
I don't do anything special. I don't do any services or whatsoever. But if you want to just be friends, or people want to be friends and just chat, I'm here.
For sure, man.
I'm not really working for the moment, so yeah.
I get it, man. Well, other than that, guys, thank you for joining me for the end of season 2. I will see you back next week on Wednesday with Mr. Corey Hughes. And other than that, thanks, Francis, for being here. And yeah, stick around for just a second while we end the show. Have a good, happy New Year. Happy holidays, everybody. And I will be seeing you with some good stuff for season 3. Take care. And now we end it.